I'm so excited for today's Flash Talk takeover, the DIA's Art of Dining. We're joined by guest speaker Katherine Kasdorf, Associate Curator for Asian and Islamic Arts at the DIA. They are opening, the DIA is opening the Art of Dining, food culture in the Islamic world, and I'm so excited to have Katherine with us today to present on this exhibition. Thank you so much, Katherine. I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Stephanie, for that nice introduction. And let me just share my PowerPoint here, get it into the slideshow view. Okay, all right, can everyone see that okay? You all seeing it? Okay, great. So during my presentation today, I will give a brief overview of the DIA's fall exhibition, The Art of Dining, Food Culture in the Islamic World, which opened just this past Sunday, September 22nd, and will run through January 5th. And I hope you will all visit. The exhibition was originally organized by the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, or LACMA, but as I'll explain, we've done quite a bit to make it our own here in Detroit. The Art of Dining brings together 230 works of art spanning both time and geography to explore themes related to food and dining in the Islamic world. The works date from the ancient times to the present day, with most of them falling between the 800s and the 1800s, still a pretty broad time frame. They come from many places across a broad geographical expanse, including present-day Iraq, Iran, Egypt, Syria, Turkey, Spain, India, Afghanistan, and more. China and Italy are also represented through objects that demonstrate connections with dining in the Islamic world. And the overarching idea that unites all these wonderful works of art is that works of art related to culinary culture in the Islamic world invites us to reflect upon the personal and cultural connections that we make through the preparation, sharing, and enjoyment of food. As we explain in the first room of the exhibition, when we say Islamic world, we mean regions where Islam holds significant cultural and historical importance. It covers a vast geographical area with many languages, cultures, and religions. It's very diverse. And while the majority of works in the exhibition come from an Islamic cultural sphere, most of them don't have a specific connection to the practice of Islam or any religion. So the objects on the slides that I've been showing you give some sense of the rich variety of works in the exhibition. Some of them were used for eating, drinking, and serving. So for instance, the ceramic and metal and glass vessels that you see here on this slide were all made to contain food or drink. And since spoons were the primary eating utensil in the pre-modern Islamic world, other than hands, you'll see a lot of spoons in the exhibition, including the especially deluxe example from Mughal India in the lower left of this slide. Other works in the show, like the paintings you see here, represent scenes of dining or food preparation. There are also historical cookbooks, and in fact, the image on the left comes from one of these. The exhibition also includes textiles such as napkins and sufras, floor spreads or tablecloths used to cover a dining surface. And as we'll see, there are also musical instruments that relate to entertainment provided at historical banquets and dinner parties. Now, if you take a close look at the captions on these slides, you'll notice quite a range of museum names. The works in the exhibition come from 30 public and private collections across North America, Europe, and the Middle East, many of which have world-renowned collections of Islamic art. So it's really special to have all of these works in Detroit. And between now and January 5th, we'll all have an unparalleled opportunity to see all of these stunning works of Islamic art at the DIA, complementing our own excellent collection. Speaking of our collection, there are 16 DIA works in the exhibition. You can see many of them on this slide. And I'm excited for these inclusions because it's wonderful to see works that we know so well presented in new ways, and because both the exhibition and the catalog are bringing more attention to the DIA's collection. So a little more background here. As I mentioned briefly, the exhibition was originally organized by the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, where it was called Dining with the Sultan, the Fine Art of Feasting. Here in Detroit, though, we found that this title was not as effective for our audiences. Back in November and December, we conducted an online survey and interviews with museum visitors and community members to get some initial feedback around the exhibition, as well as feedback on the title. The survey got 191 responses, and my colleagues in the Department of Evaluation and Research conducted more than 60 interviews with visitors in the galleries, plus a few more phone interviews with various community members. And I'm grateful to these colleagues, Ken Morris, Erin Wilcox, and Caitlin Santer, for this work, which on the one hand confirmed people's interest in the exhibition, which was really great, but on the other hand also helped us determine that we would need to modify the title for the DIA's presentation of the show. Then in January, we held a town hall meeting at the Arab American National Museum in Dearborn, which our colleagues there very generously helped organize with people from their network. It was an absolutely amazing meeting, and all the participants generously shared their thoughts and insights. So feedback from all of these sources helped us develop the DIA's title, The Art of Dining, Food Culture in the Islamic World. And this feedback also informed many of our choices as we developed labels for the exhibition. All the labels you'll see in the show, by the way, were written by the DIA team. That is myself and my colleague, Megan D. Rienzo, an interpretive planner at the DIA, who has been an amazing collaborator. Although the exhibition was organized by LACMA, for its presentation in Detroit, we've really made it our own. The exhibition catalog, which retains LACMA's title, was edited by Linda Komarov, LACMA's curator of Islamic art and head of the Department of Middle Eastern Art. The contents are cleverly arranged like a menu with sections titled starters, first course, second course, etc., all the way up to fifth course. And the book includes the usual scholarly essays and catalog entries that most exhibition catalogs do, but it also includes translated excerpts from primary texts, including an amusing excerpt about a debate between wine and beer, and also historical recipes, like the recipe that you see on this screen for chickpea broth from 9th century Baghdad. And I've contributed a brief essay on the DIA's Mughal salt cellar from India. This covered metal vessel, which can fit in the palm of your hand, bears a Persian inscription with poetic lines about salt, and that's how we know its intended function. So now I'll take you on a virtual walkthrough of the show and explain the various thematic sections. When you approach the entrance to the exhibition, this is what you see. I'm really happy with the design that my colleagues Theodora Dulamis and Everett Kaiser came up with. The walls are painted a dark blue throughout with gold accents on the upper levels to help draw the eye downward to the level of the objects. And the graphic at the entrance reproduces on a large scale a spectacular metal tray from the Deccan region of southern India, inlaid with silver and brass. When you step into the first room, you'll see two large-scale water jars from Iraq against the backdrop of a map highlighting the Islamic world. Smaller objects for water around the adjacent wall. At the DIA, the theme of clean and safe drinking water, which is essential for any food culture, is woven into the introductory section. Here, in this first room, you'll also see interpretive panels to introduce the exhibition, its geography, and a few key ideas. We explain what we mean by Islamic world, and we also touch on some of the urban, agricultural, and mercantile factors that supported flourishing food cultures in these regions. The cities that we chose to highlight on the map, Baghdad, Cairo, Mecca, Istanbul, Isfahan, and Delhi, have long histories as urban centers where people of many backgrounds intermingle, sharing their favorite foods and learning about new dishes and ingredients from others. Serving as trade hubs, centers for artistic production, seats of political power, and sites of pilgrimage, these cities nurtured food cultures that endure today. Another point that we make in that first room is that most of the works in the exhibition were not made specifically for religious purposes, but that many were used by Muslims whose everyday lives were informed by Islam. The choice to add this explanatory label was informed by our conversation at the Arab American National Museum. On the one hand, the participants, who came from multiple religious communities, noted that most of the works we were showing them did not seem to have a direct connection to Islam, and this is indeed the case. But on the other hand, many of the Muslim participants discussed practices around dining that they connect with their religion, like saying the name of God before eating, the importance of sharing food as an act of charity, being a generous host and a gracious guest, and other points of etiquette that are informed by the Quran and other Islamic teachings. Not all these practices are exclusive to Islam, of course, but to many Muslims, they have religious significance. Then the rest of the introductory section, which extends into the next gallery, introduces the theme of dining in the historical Islamic world through a selection of spectacular objects that were used for food and drink or that depict the enjoyment or preparation of food and drink. And here is where you will see that tray that we used for the graphic on the title wall, as well as an important early Mughal painting that you see on the left, alternately known as Princes of the House of Timur or Humayun's Garden Party from the collection of the British Museum. And as a South Asianist, I'm especially excited about having this work on view at the DIA. Just a side note there. So then after the introduction, the next section explores connections between dining cultures, both before and after the advent of Islam in the 600s, as well as changes and innovations in tableware after the 600s. Here, you'll see objects from the ancient Middle East alongside objects from early Islamic cultures, which adopted, I should say, many of the recipes and dining practices of their predecessors. For instance, Persian kings of the Sasanian Empire, which was centered on present-day Iran and Iraq between the early 200s and mid-600s, hosted lavish banquets complete with entertainment, wine drinking, and discussion to cultivate political loyalty, and these practices continued at many Islamic royal courts. Then next, we arrive at the dining experience in a section based on the sufra. I briefly mentioned the term sufra earlier. It's a word used in Persian, Arabic, and Turkish, referring to a cloth that covers a dining surface. Traditionally, it's spread on the floor, the ground, or a low table, but the word also has come to have a broader meaning, and it can refer to any surface where food is served, like a dining table. So the works you'll see in this section all relate to the experience of gathering around the sufra for a communal meal. Here you'll see a cloth sufra, paintings representing people eating together, and objects that one would find on and around a sufra. This section also includes some multisensory features. For instance, near a case with objects related to hand washing, including a ewer, basin, and napkin, there are two scent boxes. Those are the black boxes you see in this photo, one for orange blossom and one for rose water. Fragrance was and still is an important part of the dining experience in the Islamic world, and hosts would perfume the spaces of their dinner parties with flowers and incense. Water for washing hands was also typically scented with perfumes such as rose water. And these aromas, as well as the delicious smell of food, all would have been part of the dining experience. In this section, there's also a smaller room with an interactive digital sufra. It's a low round table with 4 dishes at the center that contain screens showing some of the historical food preparations that are published as recipes in the catalog. And LACMA developed this digital sufra, but if the idea sounds familiar to some of you, it's no coincidence because they were directly inspired by the DIA's French dining table, a feature of the museum's, the DIA's European galleries on the 3rd floor. Here, though, in keeping with dining traditions of the traditional Islamic world, people are invited to sit on low cushions rather than taller chairs, and instead of personal plates, each place is set with a very realistic-looking loaf of fake pita bread. So moving along, another section relates to food and health. Food is central to the medical science that historically prevailed throughout the Islamic world, and there's a significant amount of overlap between historical cookbooks and medical texts. This section includes a manuscript of the Taqwim al-Sinha, or Almanac of Health, a food-focused Arabic medical text that was written by the Baghdadi physician Ibn Butlan in the 11th century, and later translated into Latin and other European languages. And in this section, there are also objects associated with pharmacies. Nearby is a section on food sourcing and preparation, which we're calling In the Kitchen. This is where you'll find those historical cookbooks, as well as paintings representing kitchen staff and objects used for kitchens, such as the food storage jar you see here, and also this mortar and pestle. Here, there are also 6 time-lapse videos showing the preparation of the same historical dishes that were featured in the digital sufra. Lakma worked with the Iranian-American chef Najmi Batmanglij to create these videos for the exhibition. And the recipes have all been updated from The Modern Cook, and you can access them with a QR code on the label next to the videos and also on the label near that digital sufra. So moving right along, the next section focuses on outdoor dining and picnics. Here you'll see paintings depicting these activities, like this representation of royal Qajar women in Iran enjoying tea and snacks, painted by the artist Ismail Jalayir in the 1870s or so. And there are also objects made to carry food, like this so-called lunchbox, really a giant food carrier from 15th century Syria. Then there are 2 sections that consider cultural aspects of dining other than food itself. One focuses on music and entertainment because no banquet was complete without entertainment. Here, you'll see a variety of musical instruments, and you'll be able to access brief soundtracks featuring music from each of these instruments through QR codes on the section panel and labels. And there are also paintings that represent people with some of the instruments in the case. Next, we have dressing for dinner, a section that includes historical garments from different places, as well as napkins that would have been used to keep clothing clean. The garments are all quite luxurious, but they include practical details like slits in the sides that made it easy to sit at a low table or sufra, and also slits in the sleeves that made it easier to roll up your sleeves during a meal. Another section highlights coffee culture. Coffee, of course, first became popular in the Islamic world, and in fact, the word coffee derives from the Arabic kahwa. In Turkey and elsewhere in the Ottoman Empire, coffee culture was all the rage by the mid-1500s, and the objects in this section mostly come from Turkey. You'll see coffee pots and cups, beautiful tray covers for presenting coffee sets, and this painting, which probably was made by a European artist living in Istanbul in the 1700s. This representation of an elite Ottoman lady enjoying coffee combines fact and fantasy, and we've developed a multi-part label to help unpack it. And by the way, this section also includes another scent box, one for coffee. I seem to be missing a slide, so I apologize, but I will just let you know that one of the last sections of the exhibition explores connections between the Middle East and other regions, including China and Europe, with objects that show shared artistic styles or techniques in objects made for food. So there is a lot of Chinese porcelain in that section because Chinese porcelain was collected by elites in the many parts of the Islamic world and elsewhere. There are ceramics made inspired by Chinese porcelain, and then there are examples of European ceramics made through techniques first developed in the Islamic world. Sorry that I'm missing that slide. Then bringing the theme of dining into the present, the exhibition concludes with a multimedia installation by the Iraqi-born, Netherlands-based artist Sadiq Quraish Al-Fraji, which LACMA commissioned specifically for the exhibition. Titled A Thread of Light Between My Mother's Fingers and Heaven, the work includes a large-scale animation, drawings, and photographs, all of which focus on the artist's mother and her homemade bread. It's a beautiful work evoking feelings of comfort, love, and nostalgia, all based in Sadiq's childhood memories of the family gathering around the sufra during mealtimes in Baghdad. Then lastly, near the end of the exhibition, we have a response station, something we like to do at the DIA, inviting visitors to add their voices to the exhibition. In the art of dining, the response station graphic includes silhouettes of objects that you'll have seen throughout the show and plate-like response cards with the prompt, "We invite you to the table. Share how food connects you to people, places, and memories." Now, we've already received some very thoughtful responses in just the first few days of the exhibition, and I'm looking forward to seeing many more. I hope some of you will feel inspired to share your own responses when you visit, and that as you go through the show, you'll find many surprising and delightful connections. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katherine. That was absolutely delightful. I can't wait to visit the DIA and visit the
Thank you.
exhibition.
Thank you.
um, Thank you so much. So this is the portion where we open up to questions of the audience. So if any of you have a question for Katherine about the exhibition, you can feel free to unmute yourselves or put it in the chat, and I can ask those questions for you. One question I had just to kick us off was, is there any programming coming up associated with this exhibition that we should put on our calendars?
Yeah, so actually this Friday evening, I'm gonna look up the DIA website because I want to make sure I get the names of the performers correct, but the DIA does a Friday music program called Friday Night Live, since we always stay open late on Fridays. And this week from 7 o'clock, starting at 7 o'clock p.m. in Rivera Court, we have Homayun Saki and Salar Nader, the art of the Afghan rhubarb and tabla. And the rhubarb is one of the instruments, one of the musical instruments in that section called Music and Entertainment in the show. So we'll have a musician playing one of those, as well as accompanied by the tabla drums. So that is what's coming up most immediately. And there is also on October 25th, there's going to be a performance of Persian shadow puppets called Song of the North in the Detroit Film Theater. It's also at 7 o'clock. And it's based on some stories from the Shahnameh epic. And some of the paintings in the exhibition, which represent scenes of dining, also come from the Shahnameh. So those are just two upcoming programs. Also, I don't know if anybody here is a member of the Friends of Asian Arts and Cultures, which is a membership auxiliary group at the DIA that I work with. We're having what we call our annual meeting on October 1st, which will include a tour of the exhibition. So if anyone's interested in joining before then and coming to the meeting, you can reach out and let me know.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
This is Anne. I have several questions. I saw the exhibit on Thursday and it's just spectacular.
Thank you.
One of the things that you see when you first walk in are these sculpted metal fruit pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And not only are they astonishing, but I was just gobsmacked to see that their purpose was to be part of the Ashura celebration for the martyrdom of Hussein.
Yeah.
And I read the catalog when I got home, piece on it, and it just amazes me when you think of uh, basically the portrayals of Ashura that people are more accustomed to seeing. So I just thought that absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, they're beautiful. And actually, U of M's very own Christiane Gruber has written an article that touches on some of those practices too.
Wonderful. Second question that I have is, of course, there's just an incredible amount of objects on display. It seemed like the percentage that were from Spain were fairly small and came from a city that I have not looked up called
Manizales.
Maniz. Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with it and what
Yeah,
role it played.
it's near Valencia, and it was a center of lusterware production. So of course, Spain was ruled by Muslim rulers for many centuries, but was always diverse, just like these other areas of the Islamic world. And so it's believed that these lusterware production practices were first under the purview of Muslim artists, although, we can't really know what religion these individual artisans were. But anyway, the techniques of lusterware kind of came to Spain during this period when southern Spain was ruled by Islamic empires, and the techniques persisted, being practiced by Muslim potters, as well as I'm sure eventually potters of other religious identities. And it was a thriving lusterware center in Spain.
Well, it's just an amazing exhibit, and it was a lot of fun to see Salvador get down on the floor and experience the
Yes.
dining.
Yeah,
Rituals
that
work.
digital Sufra, people seem hesitant to actually sit on those cushions, and I suppose it might not be comfortable for some people to sit that low on the floor. But yeah, during that preview event on Thursday, he and I and our COO Elliot Broom and others all decided to like set the example that you can sit here on these cushions. And I don't know if anybody else actually did, but it was fun.
Thank you so much.
Sure, Anne, thanks. Thank you, Ellen. I see your comment. Yeah, it was really important for us to talk to community members. You know, that's something that we often do for projects to just, it's really important to us to make sure that we present exhibitions and even permanent collection gallery installations in ways that are effective for our audiences. And so a big part of doing that is having conversations with community members ahead of time, surveying people ahead of time. So, and we want to be sure to get perspectives from a broad range of demographics, but also specifically from community members who might have some type of connection to the themes or the content of the exhibition or gallery on a more personal level. And so we wanted to be sure to get different perspectives and then adjust as needed.
I just have to add that the silver mortar and pestle was one of the most unbelievable things I've seen. I just thought that was a real star of the show.
Thanks, Anne. It's stunning, yeah. And that one's in the section for eating and health, since mortar and pestles were used in pharmacies, but you know, in theory, it could also go in the kitchen section. But that's one of the reasons that we put those two sections in the same room, because there is so much overlap between the food preparation and the health angle.
Wonderful. We probably have time for about one more question.
If there aren't any more questions, I'll
Yeah.
just invite all of you to come visit the DIA and see the exhibition. I hope you'll all make it to Detroit. Again, it's on view through January 5th.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Katherine for your presentation, and thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.